1 Corinthians 14:34, the women should keep silence in churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be subordinate, as even the law says.
Yep.
Can you touch on your opinion on if women should be allowed to speak in churches or
Yeah,
not?
it's real simple. In the next chapter, or the previous chapter, Paul writes, when women pray and prophesy, they're to have their heads covered. Well, what are you, Paul? Schizophrenic? You're telling women when you pray and prophesy, have your heads covered. That's obviously talking, praying and prophesying in public. And I don't let women talk. Now, you got to read in context. You don't just interpret any way. All right, let me ask you guys, how do you interpret what you read? How do you interpret any book? Come on, guys, help me. How were you taught at this fine university to interpret what you read? What principles are there? Thank you. Who said that? Right on, brother. Context. You don't rip one line out and say that's the point of the author. To interpret, you read in context, as the gentleman said. What's another point? If it's science, do you read it as poetry? You will flunk. If it's poetry, do you read it as science? No, you will flunk. You respect literary genre, literary style. So when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, does that mean that he was literally a shepherd who took care of sheep? He's using metaphor, isn't he, to make a point. When Jesus says, I am the light of the world, is he claiming to be a 100-watt light bulb? No. He's using metaphor once again to make a point. So, you read in context, you respect literary style, and you interpret. So when Paul says, when women are praying and prophesy, they're to have their heads covered, and I do not allow a woman to speak in public, what on earth is he talking about? Well, when he says, I do not allow a woman to speak, the context is order in worship. What was happening? We'll just go out and watch the movie Yentl. Barbara Streisand plays a young Jewish girl who wants to get an education. And in her culture, women were not allowed to get an education. So she has to disguise herself as a male in order to go to school. So what happens? The gospel of Jesus Christ comes in, women are just as valuable as men, and the women go nuts. They abuse their new freedom. And they start just blurting out all over the place, and Paul says, boom, time out, keep your mouth shut. Go out and get an education, learn like Priscilla has, and my good friend Priscilla, who's obviously not a guy, is helping me, the Apostle Paul, to teach the great preacher Apollos how to preach.